Three, two, one.
Brian.
Hey, Peyton.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
You got it. You got it. Well, we got connected first off on LinkedIn. Really appreciate you communicating with me through there.
Absolutely. It's a tremendous medium.
Yeah, it is. It's a heck of a platform.
Yeah, sure is.
We could do a whole podcast just on that. It would be probably a couple hours long. But it's amazing how that's evolved.
Yeah.
But so your background, you worked for your dad's company that he started back in the 60s or 70s?
Yeah, well, it's basement. The business started, and my father started in the basement of our house. I was a teenager. I don't know, it might have been 16, 17. It was 1976. My father had taken stock out of a company that he had been a executive with previously, and just kind of went down and bought a mini computer at the time and put it in the basement, installed it in the basement of our house, and started writing code for about a year and a half or 2 years, and developed a relational database management system, which was one of the first commercially available in the industry. We were published alongside of Ingress and Oracle back in those days, but I started the business and incorporated in 1976, and I didn't have to go far to kind of observe what was going on and in terms of the technology and the programming, and I was fascinated with the computers and the terminals, and even before that, he would come home with these teletype machines and old time-sharing type devices back in the mid-60s. He was kind of a pioneer in Kansas City. Jake Roof, he installed the first solid-state computer in the Kansas City metro area. But before then, they were all tubes, and they were huge monsters of machines. And CDC 160 is the computer. We still have it out in our barn. But
how big is that thing?
It's huge. It's bigger than this desk.
Wow.
It's got core memory, kind of like the lunar modules did. So it's non-volatile. Still has the memory in it that when it was turned off. So, so
what was your dad's thinking? So he bought. Was it this computer that he bought?
No. He bought a digital PDP-11, which was a mini computer. Okay. Back then, everything was mainframes: Honeywell, IBM, Unisys, big mainframes. That was the centralized computing model. Back then, most businesses couldn't afford a computer, and so what we did and started off with in that business, and my dad did actually, was time sharing. And that's where businesses, since they couldn't afford the expense of these, even a mini computer, which was much smaller than the mainframes, most businesses couldn't afford them. So you would use a telephone line to connect up to one, and that was what we called time sharing.
Wow.
And my dad started that. We had a 50, 100 pair phone line running up to our house. So we had 100, basically 50 phone lines running into the basement of our house with all these modems and acoustic couplers and all that kind of stuff. So you remember the old bulletin board systems? I don't know if you're pretty young.
Yeah.
Right? So you probably don't remember that stuff. I think you had interviewed. I was watching one of your prior interviews from a guy that was doing the cybersecurity, and he was talking about another Olathe guy.
Yeah.
Was talking about he was talking about the days of bulletin board systems, and that he had 4 phones, I think, in the basement of his house. His parents were kind of curious what what he was using that for. So
what's the objective of the company? Why would they want to be set up with one of these?
Well,
lines?
back then there were no personal computers. So if they wanted to do just basic accounting functions, accounts payable, payroll, those kinds of functions, they didn't have computers. They couldn't afford computers. So my dad developed a 4GL, a fourth generation language, a relational database management system as the foundation, and we built applications. He built, and the company eventually built applications on top of that in a much faster way than you could with the traditional languages, 3GLs, like a Fortran, Basic, COBOL, those kinds of languages. So we could build applications much quicker and then deploy those out to people very inexpensively through time sharing. So you just need a terminal and a modem and acoustic coupler back in those days. So nowadays we call that outsourcing.
Yeah.
Back then it was time sharing. So sometimes the more things change, the more they stay the same. But really, to this day, that's what that model still stands. I mean, you could say that was early cloud.
No, I mean we see outsourcing development companies all the time. I mean, there's a lot of companies that we work with that are outsourcing companies, whether
Right.
it's hardware side,
Right.
or if it's a call center, it's specific software for a call center,
Yeah.
or if it's straight up development of mobile or web apps.
Right.
I mean, outsourcing is. I mean, that's what we do. We're outsourced recruiting.
Right, right, and it's really software as a service. So you're paying monthly for a service, and so that's that's kind of how that the company originally began, was in the basement of our house in a kind of a software as a service model. Also sold the database system and the 4GL to different businesses as well, but a lot of it was based upon the time sharing model.
So did he know how to program before he bought the computer?
Yeah, he was a chemical engineer and got his master's degree in chemical
Smart dude.
engineering. So in chemical engineering, they do it a lot with statistics.
Yeah.
Regression analysis, factor analysis, all the tools that data scientists are using today. He was a data scientist in back then. While he studied engineering, programming was a necessary means to an end in terms of a lot of the analysis that they were doing. So he had built his own tools to do stepwise regression and factor analysis and cluster analysis and all these tools. He had built them and written them in Fortran. Wasn't my favorite language, but we ultimately had to deal with it.
Fortran.
Old.
That's a new one.
Very old.
Old language.
Formula translation, I think. Yeah, it's a math engineering language, so
Jeez.
that's probably why he knew it. But most everything in those days was at least for our company in those days, was written in Fortran. So that was his background, statistical analysis, and he eventually began to apply that. The 4GL and the decision support tools kind of emerged after that, where we were applying the statistics and the tools towards demographic data. So census data that we would collect, that we established ultimately a relationship with one of the credit bureaus in the United States, which was Experian, which was had information on every household in the United States. So he was able to develop a partnership with them. So we had this wealth of information, and we were able to apply those tools to the statistical analysis tools to that geographic and demographic information to build some of the cluster product that we built as a foundation for our company for and to this day.
Wow. So was he going out and also selling?
Yeah, he was
So
also selling.
he was doing
doing it all.
everything.
Yeah.
He sounds like a unicorn.
Yeah, you could say that.
Well, I mean, you look at the Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs, and they had that skill set.
Yeah.
That programming skill set, but they're also charismatic and we're leaders and we're sales guys.
Yeah.
And they did both. And we hardly come across those people.
Yeah.
But shout out to Gene. I mean, he reminds me of one of those kind of guys.
Yeah.
That can do both ends. It's very incredible skill set to have.
Yeah, Jake was his name, but he was probably a better engineer than he was a salesman, but he was very charismatic, and I mean, he ultimately became the mayor of Olathe, and a lot of people remember him and know of him.
Yeah.
So,
No, I'm talking about Gene, the cybersecurity.
Oh yeah, Gene. Sorry about that. Yeah.
So, talk about that a little
Gene
bit.
was interesting. That was a good conversation.
it was
I enjoyed
great.
watching that one.
That was good one.
Yeah.
So Jake, your dad,
Yeah.
was also a mayor.
Yeah, he was.
So when did that happen in between all this?
Yeah.
Jeez, right?
Yeah, it was 1991, I think it was, and he actually leveraged our products, the products that he built, to help target. And ultimately, when we were doing market segmentation and modeling and profiling, I probably should back into the '60s because he had a partnership and actually began doing direct marketing back before he even started Roof Corporation. He had an encounter with a gentleman by the name of Martin Baer, and worked with him at an insurance company called Old American Insurance Company, and they developed one of the first zip code model, utilizing zip codes. I don't know if you know what ZIP stands for, Zone Improvement Plan. That was the way to categorize, mail and whatnot.
Okay.
So they were able to build a targeting model based around zip codes. And zip codes are very big. You could have tens of thousands of households in them, so it wasn't most sophisticated by today's standards. But that really kind of began. Martin Baer ultimately wrote an article that appeared in the Harvard Business Review on this solution that they had built. And then Martin Baer became a professor at UMKC and just a well-renowned individual in terms of direct marketing, wrote a number of books. My brother was a co-author on at least one, maybe two of them. and he ultimately got inducted into the Direct Marketing Hall of Fame. So he was a real legend in terms of direct marketing. But that kind of got my dad thinking about using demographics, building models with demographic data and psychographic data, and turning that into competitive advantage for targeting individuals. So that kind of set the stage for later days when he developed that clustering system and built I don't know if you're familiar with Prism, but they have a clustering system at zip code level as well. And about many years before they came out with, we were about maybe, 8-10 years ahead of them in terms of having a household level cluster product. So basically a cluster is just a unique code. You assign it to a household based upon the household's characteristics. And most of those are assigned to people with similar characteristics. So it has encapsulated intelligence about your lifestyles, your purchase behaviors, your brand preferences, whether you drive a Chevy or a Ford or tend to, travel by plane or by train, interests in jewelry, thousands of different lifestyle variables. We call them psychographics that were used to help profile individuals. And he built up that clustering system with that psychographic information, and actually used that tool to help target for when he was running for mayor, the people that were likely to vote, people that, most likely to vote obviously, and people that would vote for him. So he used those tools to help win the mayorship.
Okay, so he was using the tools that he had built to help him get elected.
Yeah,
to his advantage.
Right.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Right. Why not?
So it sounds like what you described is what Facebook is getting heat for right now, and that is targeting advertisements to the specific person, down to what street they're on, what they're looking on their phones, etc.
Yeah, there's a big difference in that the models that we have done historically in traditional direct marketing were built upon lifestyle information and information that is compiled through surveys. And these thousands of lifestyles, for example, are based on surveys. It's a propensity for you to drink mineral water or drink Coke. It's not, we don't know that you may drink mineral water or Coke as a fact. Facebook has actual transactional kinds of information that they're actually collecting on people in terms of their click patterns and their preferences. That it's much more disheartening, I guess, when they're leveraging your preferences, click type information to market to leverage that to their competitive advantage for marketing and promoting any kind of campaign, whether it be a political campaign or whatever.
Right.
So ours is there's a little bit of an arm's length kind of separation there, so that we're not really subject to that pushback of proprietary lifestyle or proprietary click data or cookie data, whether it's anonymous or not. That is increasingly becoming a little bit disconcerting.
There's a line.
Yeah, there is a line,
and no one's really defined that line.
Yeah. Well,
except for a moral compass, almost.
Yeah, there's a couple lines historically in the credit bureau business, which we were partnered with Experian for many years. There was a line in terms of what information you could use and what information you couldn't use, and that was the fair credit kind of information. So above the line, you had age, marital status, presence of children, estimated income, that kind of information that is fairly common information. But below the line were things that were protected, credit information and things like that they could not divulge for analytical purposes for our kinds of businesses. So that was a pretty clear line that was pretty well defined and codified into law. These days, that line is being increasingly blurred with click traffic because as much as you want it to be anonymous, there's ways of de-anonymizing that data.
Okay.
And especially in small data sets. I mean, there's people that have, I think on some 60-minute shows, that some folks that have been de-anonymized with data that they thought was, that they were anonymous on. And it's not that hard to triangulate in and figure out who a particular subject may be when the data sets are fairly small in a particular region or particular area. So that kind of data becomes a little bit suspect in terms of ways that you use it. I've heard of people talk about situations where they were visiting a website and then they didn't volunteer any information whatsoever, and then subsequently received a phone call marketing to them. Those are things that get into kind of that spooky realm, where there's going to be a little bit of a pushback, and that's because they're whether it's anonymous data or not, somehow or other they're connecting those dots.
It happens to me every day.
Yeah,
I get 4 or 5 spam calls a day, and I mean, I haven't signed up. I didn't sign up for that. And I also was talking to a lawyer about it, and there's some act they passed, but it's not legal to be doing that.
Yeah.
To be soliciting you like that when you haven't given your phone number out to be solicited to.
Yeah.
So, all that data is incredibly valuable. And you were talking about, and I've seen some recent articles that they're now they're valuing data. Each individual's data is more valuable than oil.
Yeah.
And that's the
data's the new oil, and we talked about before we started that data's the new oil or the new gold, and it's extremely valuable. It does require, first of all, an extraction process, and then a refining process to turn it into something of value, and that's generally nowadays not insignificant. So I've heard it said that. As much as data scientists are in high demand right now because we're data rich and information poor. I mean, organizations are being, are seeing exponential growth in data, and they're not able to process it quick enough. And certain industries are just getting bogged down, and healthcare is a good example. But that data is extremely valuable. They get more and more of it, but they're not making use of it as effectively as they need to. So that's where they need tools and resources. And the data scientist is kind of that career that you're probably looking at and trying to fill in a lot of cases. But what we're seeing now, and what I'm hearing, and I've had an opportunity for the last couple months to kind of step back and kind of assess the landscape, but and do some research and things. But because I'm kind of looking at the long term in terms of it's not so much what's the problem tomorrow and next year, but what's the problem in 5 years and 10 years. The Wayne Gretzky analogy, skate to where the puck's going and not where it is. So the problem is that the data curation process that's necessary to actually turn this data into something of value is extremely time-consuming and draining for the high-dollar resources like a data scientist, who's ultimately one that is stuck with that. So there's lots of different suggestions and ideas of ways to remedy that problem, but and that's one that I'm interested in too, in terms of exploring new opportunities down the road. But there's I've heard estimates as much as 99% of the time and effort is really just in the curation process. And that involves the extraction, the ingestion of data, the transformation of data, the cleansing of the data, schema mapping in terms of determining some kind of schema for it to fall into, and then consolidation of duplicate records, entity consolidation. Those are all part of this process of curation that you might think of as the refinement process for oil or for the extraction process of gold that really is necessary before you can start making value.
It's a great analogy. It really is.
Yeah.
It is the same process.
Yeah.
It's just, but making it make sense to, especially to people who don't understand the data.
Yeah.
And non-IT folks.
Right.
So you guys have an incredibly unique situation where there's all 4 sons working for the company. What did that look like? What was your dad's approach with having his sons work for him, work for the company, carry it on? What did that look like?
He was a pretty hard-nosed kind of a father and leader. So he kept us in line, with 4 boys, you might imagine. We certainly had plenty of our fair share of family squabbles and issues, and with brothers in general, there's a lot of potential turf wars or battles or whatever, however you want to say it. But we've had this was we'd be going on our 4th decade of working together, so in a sense, so or past that actually. We've had plenty of time to kind of work out brother sister type issues and things that are, we know what's not productive. Ultimately, you still have those, tensions and things that you have with any family. But ultimately, in the end, if you're working with your family, hopefully at least you can count on one thing, and that's trust.
Yeah.
And that's really important. And as much as we disagree, we have knockout dragouts. I mean, still,
Yeah.
I'm not there on a day-to-day basis anymore, but we ultimately come together on the big decisions, including selling the company. So we ultimately come together and air out everybody's opinions and make sure everybody's heard, and ultimately work things out.
Yeah.
So it was a process, and my dad was kind of a strong arm guy to kind of help it along. But then he passed away in the late 90s. So when we bought the company back in 96, I think it was, we reconstituted that leadership. We no longer had our father around to kind of, enforce anything. We ultimately had to reconstitute around a common goal. And
so you sold it once.
Yeah, we sold it in 96, I think.
96. And then you bought it back?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so...
It's okay if you don't know the time.
Yeah, it was 90. Yeah, so we bought it back 4 years later after that. So we sold it to a subsidiary of Dean Witter Discover and Company. They were out of Chicago. And, we had a fairly aggressive, earn-out over a 3-year period. We had to meet those earn-outs, so we were all fairly committed to those. We were able to achieve each and every milestone for each year, which, allowed us to see kind of the strongest growth that we had seen up until then. So, so we had achieved our earn-out over a 3-year period, and then we were pretty much just became employees again. And then the parent company got... rolled up or acquired twice. Twice rolled up, Associates Financial, and then I think there was another one. And the opportunity presented itself for us to buy the company back, and we seized on that opportunity. And they were at a situation where they wanted to divest of their subsidiaries, all of their subsidiaries, and that afforded us the opportunity to put in an offer and see if we could get it back, and we were able to be successful.
What compelled you guys to buy it back?
Well, we were still committed to the mission and the vision, and enjoyed the work that we were doing. And we still, it was a good story, and we wanted to continue that together. So, I don't think that was too much disagreement. I think in terms of that, we came together pretty well on that one.
And you guys just sold it again, or transitioning?
just sold it again. To Infutur out of Chicago,
and this is final. You guys are.
I would. Nothing's ever final, but it's the transaction is final, and I don't know that we would do the management buyout again. I doubt that. I think this is an opportunity for us to kind of move in some different directions. As people want to. We've had a good run, and working together as a family company for so many years. I mean, 43 years, I think, from the very beginning. Yeah. So and then managing it as or reconstituted, brothers for some 18 years or so. So yeah.
Has it changed the relationship, maybe for the better, since you guys aren't working with each other every day?
No, I don't. Surprisingly, when we worked together every day, we didn't really talk that much. It might be in the same physical building, but my wife might talk to my brother more than I do. So it's kind of one of those things. You could be living in the same building or in the same house and not talk that much. So, but no, I don't think so. I think we've got some strong relationships, and I think those endure over time. And continue to endure. We've been through a lot, together with our business interests, and we've got other investments and things too, so that we work together on. So so it's everybody's different and has different interests, but we've been able to work together for a long period of time and create value, and that's very rewarding.
So we all know that the tech landscape and just the connectivity to the phones and everything, the Internet of Things.
Yeah,
it's a wild landscape.
Absolutely.
And big data's right on top of that, and all the things are right on top of that. What do you think your dad would say right now?
That's a good question.
Because obviously, I just got done watching an awesome three-part documentary on Netflix that Brett told me about on Bill Gates. What was that called?
Oh yeah.
Inside Bill's Mind.
Yeah, Inside Bill's Mind.
Oh yeah.
And it talks. He developed a program in the early '70s. When he was in 8th grade, when he wrote his first language, and he did it. He created a sorting algorithm for his prep school to help all the kids and the staff figure out which classes they're going to take. And he wrote an algorithm for it.
Oh wow!
It was, and it just sounds similar. It's just sorting data into groups.
Yeah.
Probably the most simplest thing. So
Right.
that was extremely cutting edge.
Yeah.
And they were repackaging that algorithm, that software, and selling it to other folks. And he was in 8th grade at the time.
Yeah. Right.
And so it
right.
sounds like your dad was creating something similar. But now, today,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like, where do you go?
Yeah.
What's it going to look like?
Right.
It's just so unknown.
Exactly. I like to think that I'm at least a fraction of as much of a visionary as he was. He was very forward-thinking, and that's one of the things that maybe too forward-thinking in some ways. A lot of people would credit him with his forward-thinking skills and whatnot, but I think he would be seeing things on the horizon as well in terms of the need for things like artificial intelligence and technologies to help automate a lot of these processes that are going on. For example, the curation processes, for example, leveraging some of these tools and technologies. Artificial intelligence, as it's called today, is predominantly an artificial narrow intelligence. It's more of a application of AI towards a very routine kind of a process that allows the computer to exceed what a human can do, but it's a very narrow kind of a problem that's generally solved with that. But I think probably the next generation of that is really what's kind of exciting, and that's when you get into artificial general intelligence, and that's where the computer actually can think and rationalize and have some understanding of the context of what's going on. I'm sure he would be thinking about some of those kinds of things as I am.
You were telling me a wild story about when you log onto a website and there's a little chat bot in the corner, and it's
chatbots are
how
huge.
can I help you?
Right.
I guess too. They had two Facebook had two chatbots that they put in a little chat box together. And they were going back and forth and talking to each other.
Right.
And they ended up creating their own language and
shut it down.
Yeah, they had to shut it down. Because they were starting to learn, they were learning what was going on.
Oh,
they were talking to each other in their own.
Yeah. And that's the general intelligence that you're talking about.
Yeah, artificial general intelligence. They start comprehending things and being able to rationalize. And I'm as a computer scientist, I was fascinated by that. I remember taking back my old AI class, but that was all back in the 80s. It was all rule-based. AI was, everything was done in Lisp, which is a special programming language, but it was all based upon rules. Now, most people think of it as machine learning, which is more processing data and finding patterns and that kind of thing. I really think that blending those two is really where ultimately we need to go, because there's this black box problem with machine learning that you can't really describe what you get out of that model. You can train a model and it'll learn, and it can do better in many cases than the human, but you can't really describe it. And that creates certain problems in certain industries. Aviation, for example. I mean, if you can't document it and describe it, and you can't undo a piece of learning once it's fed into that as easily. So I do think there's going to ultimately be some kind of combination between maybe some rule-based learning and some machine learning that I think some kind of a hybrid solution ultimately could help that. But the chat boxes are very fascinating. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the Turing test, but that was really Alan Turing who I don't know if you've seen the movie. The movie of him with the Enigma code.
With Benedict Cumberbatch. Is
Yeah.
that one? Yeah, where he cracks the code.
I
can't think of the name.
Yeah, it's fantastic movie.
Great movie.
The Turing test. Alan Turing suggested that at some point in time we will get to a point to where you can sit down in maybe a character cell kind of a terminal, typing words to another person. and it'll get to the point to where a human will not be able to discern between the computer and a human in a I think he postulated maybe a 45-minute period or 30-minute period or something like that. So that it would be so good that you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a human and a machine within about 45 minutes. So, with these they do these Turing competitions every year, these chatbox companies, and they do these things every year, and they're getting better and better and better, and you're getting to the point to where you can't really tell the difference. So,
wow.
Maybe there's certain questions you can ask, that are more subjective. You learn, if you want to break one of those, but most people wouldn't be able to tell right out of the gate, and a lot of times they're talking. You talk about these cold calls. Some of those are sometimes machine-based, and they're talking in a human voice, but they're responding with a human voice, but they're programmed messages based upon what your response is. So it's this hybrid kind of human-computer kind of an interface. Chatbots are that too. They're getting, originally when they first came out, they were just some small percentage of first line customer support that they could handle. I don't know, 5% or whatever, but it's getting to more 10, 20, 30, maybe 40%. I don't know what the numbers are now these days, but they're getting so good that they can field a large percentage of those calls that are coming in and address their needs without going to a human.
Yeah. What is that threshold of going from actually being just
it's arbitrary. You can set those up. The businesses can set those up based upon the kinds of questions or the kinds of needs. I conducted a AI seminar on travel and tourism a couple of years ago in Las Vegas, and I'm trying to remember the name of the hotel of the chatbot. It's a computerized chauffeur. I can't think of the word. The person in the hotel that helps show you around.
The hostess,
the person in the lobby that
bellboy.
Yeah, that arranges all your trips in restaurants.
The concierge.
Yeah, the concierge. So these are digital concierges, right? And gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but anyway. When I checked into the hotel we were staying at was serviced by this digital concierge. And so I started messing with it a little bit. And one of the speakers that we had was the person in charge of that project. So when she came, I met with her before our presentation at the conference. And she told me that she saw all of my conversations because she was overseeing, she knew I was checking in and she was overseeing what was happening. And they can intervene whenever they want. So there's a lot of times there's people, their call centers are seeing even the exchanges sometimes that the computer is having just to make sure. If there's a profound word, for example, that's a trigger that will automatically bring on a human and say, what's going on here? I'm sorry that you're upset. Whatever. Right. So there's certain triggers that kick in that human in the call center, but they're able to staff that with much fewer people than what they ever were, and they can dial up, certain keywords as far as what triggers, that invocation or forwarding or whatever they call it to the human person to actually deal with a situation that's maybe more in depth, a level 2 or level 3 type of a situation. So
no, it's going to be integral in business. I just about a week ago I changed my Verizon plan and I did it all through a chat. It wasn't a chat bot, but I got started with a chat bot.
Yeah.
I have to talk to a human. I have to go to the Verizon store. I have to schedule an appointment. I changed everything. I got all the info I needed through the website.
Yeah.
And that is good customer service.
It's pretty impressive. And those chat bots, incidentally, and then are being used more and more across all industries, including the healthcare profession, which is even making it more data that they have to analyze because there's so much data that comes out of those chat boxes that makes it even a greater problem in terms of being data rich and information poor. They're getting deluged with all that information. So there's so much rich data that comes out of those exchanges, and they're just getting better and better all the time to where it's going to be very, very difficult to really pass that Turing test.
So you serve on the University of Kansas Computer Science and Electrical Engineering Board?
Yeah, the advisory board.
So what does that look like?
Yeah, well, we have some very, very distinguished people. I mean, it's a fantastic board. We have about 15 folks on that board, and we meet twice a year. Really, the charge is to advise the department, advise the chairman in terms of a number of different things, including curriculum and faculty support, recruiting and retention, assessment and accreditation. They just recently went through an accreditation process for all of their programs last year, and we brought up a lot of the advisory board members to meet with the board, the auditors that are coming in, and that was extremely helpful. And one of them told me personally how impressed he was with the advisory board, and how that more and more schools, a lot of them have them, not all of them do. And I think the school he came from was one that he was inquiring about. He's wanting to have an advisory board similar, because it provides, it helps them in accreditation in terms of giving them that industry perspective, make sure that they're in alignment with industry needs in some ways. Not that that's their mission, but that outside perspective is often very helpful. We've got a number of really fantastic folks, CEOs of companies, CEO at InfuseIn out on the East Coast. We've got a former dean from the University of Nevada, Reno. We've got Director of Engineering, Honeywell, a number of local companies. We've got Honeywell, we've got Garmin, represented Burns and McDonnell, Cerner, and Brian McClendon, who is now working actually at the school. He was a co-inventor, developer of Google Earth, and he was ultimately, his company got bought by Google, became Google Earth. He was a vice president of Google for many, many years, lived out in California.
He lives here now?
Yeah, he lives here. He lives in Lawrence. Came back to Lawrence, and now
he's good man.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, he is fantastic. Yeah, I would highly recommend you get Brian McClendon. He's really kind of helping the university in many ways in terms of, he gives out his number to any of the students. He comes to all our advisory boards. We meet with the students and whatnot. He's very welcoming to all the students in terms of giving out his number for anybody has any questions about really anything. After Google, he went on to Uber, and he's a fabulous individual. He's also an inductee into the National Academy of Engineering, so he's very, very, very distinguished. So he'd be a fantastic interviewer candidate for you.
What are you? So you've been on the board for what, 8 years?
Yeah, something like that.
Do you get to interact with any of the kids?
Oh yeah, we do. Every year, graduation time is one of the things that we do as an advisory board. Is we conduct interviews with graduating seniors. We also have them come in. The department will pick. They have what's called the capstone classes. As a senior, they do their capstone. These are very large projects that they do as teams. And the department will select one from each department. We have computer science, we have electrical engineering, we have computer engineering, and they'll all come and they'll present during the board meeting, and it's fantastic being able to talk to them. Yeah. We have a number of the student associations that I interact with quite a bit. I've been up there to meet with them at Applebee's and others. The Association of Computing Machinery. We have the IEEE, which is a very huge professional group for electrical engineering. They've got a group called the Information Security Club, which is called the J Hackers. Okay. So they do competitions, and they're very excellent. I mean, they do very well in regional competitions.
Are they doing pen testing?
Yeah, they go into a competition. Well, I mean, not for money, but they're breaking into computers in ethical hacking situations.
Capture flag too, probably.
Yeah, so the red, green, blue team. I don't remember what it is, but it was kind of funny because I was asked to join a CISO panel at the Kansas City Cybersecurity Conference 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And one of the questions asked was from a professor, I think, at Northwest Missouri State, asked, how could we prepare kids for careers in cybersecurity? And we had actually had a little bit of a discussion before amongst the other CISO folks that just pure IT people aren't necessarily the best at. They're good at learning networking and all those kinds of things, but when it comes to learning how to break into a system, sometimes you need a little bit of creativity and other kinds of skills and and that aren't just rote skills.
Yeah.
So I suggested to him that he start, if he hadn't already, a cybersecurity kind of a club, like information security club, where they do actual ethical hacking. And when the kids these days that are graduating, they're so digital savvy.
Yeah.
And if they, a lot of them can really do really well in that, whether they have a formal computer science degree or not. Some of them can understand how to, are interested in maybe seeing how they could, it's a game to them, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a game to figure out how to break into a system. They're very knowledgeable on a lot of the tools and techniques. So
are you seeing that they're already educated on those skill sets before even getting fully immersed into the program?
Yeah, well, they're fully educated on digital devices and somewhat educated on security issues and things like that. So they know the systems well and have a lot of their lives. I've got 3 kids. A lot of their lives are they're all over 18, but still a lot of their lives are online.
Yeah.
So they're born and bred online, so they understand a lot of what's going on there.
What if someone's curious about getting into either one of these departments, electrical engineering or computer science? What is the forecast for recruiting? Are you seeing are companies coming pretty aggressive, wanting graduates?
Yeah. I always ask them about their job prospects. Almost universally, they've all got offers. And in some cases they don't. Some of them are looking to go into grad school or go into the research laboratory, possibly. But if they're looking for a job, or if they go to a career fair, they're going to get a job. A lot of these companies, from the board members that are on our advisory board, are recruiting folks, their junior year. Mm-hmm. And I'm always interested in talking to people of any major as far as their job prospects and whatnot. I hadn't seen a lot of people that are being recruited as early as they are,
right.
With electrical engineering, computer science,
do you think
computer engineering degrees. So I think it's still extremely hot. If you look at the top careers and top jobs, they'll sell things like computer engineering, electrical engineering, computer science are always up there, very, very high. So
and I don't see it slowing down.
No, it's not slowing down. And we need to. And I want to congratulate you, Peyton, for the generosity that you're showing to the region in terms of contributing 5% of your revenues or net revenues to the KC STEM initiative.
Appreciate that.
And that's a fantastic thing that you're doing, and you should be commended for that. That's fantastic, because we need to encourage STEM at the early levels. And what the KC STEM initiative does is it has the early, it starts in elementary school with first Lego League and first Lego League Junior, and then first robotics and all these things. And you said, I think you mentioned that you'd been to one of those first robotics competitions. They were fantastic. I was just blown away.
Yeah.
I mean, they're full bleachers, bigger than a lot of high school gyms, loaded and packed with people cheering. It was more excitement and energy than I'd seen in a lot of high school football games.
Yes.
And it's just amazing.
Well,
you, I think, started off by, and I'm sorry for digressing, but you asked about it. I get a chance to talk to the students. Talking to those students is extremely inspiring.
Yes. They're
and you
really,
see what
really
these kids
smart.
are doing and what they want to do and how motivated and energized they are with technology and science and engineering, and it's fantastic. And yes, we do that with the students when they graduate. We do the interviews. We have standard forms that we've put together. We ask our board to come a day early and sit down with the students for an hour interview, and then we compile all that information. And falls on me a lot of times, but compile all that information and then provide it to the board. To the chairman of the department. Yeah. And they very much appreciate that. Said it's been very valuable for them to be able to see that kind of good, bad, and ugly. I mean, there's always everybody has different issues with different classes, different professors, or whatever. But for the most part, it's just very valuable. And I just really enjoy talking with the students. And whenever I get a chance to, and anytime I come across a student, I'm always asking about just what their interests are. Why they decided on their career path or their studies path. It's just I'm just always intrigued by that. But we get that chance with them once a year.
Yeah, no, I was blown away. I went at the beginning of the year down at on Front Street. in the
Yeah.
in the metropolitan
Yeah.
warehouse,
Yeah.
and it was massive. And
Yeah.
I was totally blown away. And they had schools and elementaries and middle schools from all over the area, and these kids are, kindergarten to sixth grade, and they're building by themselves robots that are automated with remote controls. And I asked a bunch of them, and a lot of the dads and moms that were there, how much did you help? And most of them said didn't help at all. They picked this up on their own. I saw a machine they had built out of Legos. It had a laser on it that they put in there, and it was solving a Rubik's Cube on its own. The robot was. I mean, it's
pretty impressive.
That's a
And the First Robotics, which is the more high school competition, that's where it gets, there's fireworks. And I mean, these machines are going at each other, and some of them are offensive, defensive. They can run into each other, they can attack each other. That's not the mission. The mission is to kind of collect these, I think last year was these balls or whatever it was, and then put them in these hoppers or whatever.
I remember that.
You can interfere with other people. And I mean, it's an amazing setup. I mean, just the setup where all these robots operate, the apparatus is like a game show type of thing. It's very sophisticated and elaborate, and this is nationally done throughout the country. So I went to the regional event. I went to the kickoff event at the beginning of the year, and these kids learn a lot, but they do need those leaders, and those leaders sometimes are teachers or volunteers. And if anybody wants to volunteer for any of these things, I would give a shout out to Martha McCabe and the KC STEM Initiative. It's at kcstem.org. And First Robotics is kcfirst.org.
Yep.
They're always looking for volunteers to help out with events, to help, leadership. You don't have to be a leadership role. That's a fair size commitment. But, if you're an engineer, you want to volunteer those kinds of times, and they'd be very well appreciated. But they've got some volunteers and helpers with these groups that are fantastic as very fantastic as well. We need more of them. But it's just an amazing competition. The one I went to, the bleachers were very, very heavily loaded with students. A lot of cheering. The machines are just, the teams really rally behind. They may have 20 people on a team, and they're all rallying together from their high school, from their organization, from their club. And they're experiencing the joys and the defeats.
The competition is great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So, what's next for you?
Well, I've kind of taken the business is sold, so I've been kind of taking a little bit of a time off, and not really that much. It's been an opportunity for me to kind of separate from the day-to-day and really kind of take a step back and look out over the horizon and kind of see what's going on. And I'm interested in maybe, getting a little bit of an itch or getting back into a business of some kind. So we'll see, but I've been talking to a lot of folks, and people have reached out to me. I'm really interested in staying and, continuing doing some things in technology and working with people, teams in technology. There's so many opportunities out there. It's just a rich minefield of opportunities in so many ways. I guess I kind of consider myself semi-retired, but I don't know how long I want to stay there.
Yeah. Well, when you do find your next endeavor, I'd love to have it back on and talk more about it.
Absolutely. We'd love to. Love to do that with you.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. This is great.
Thank you, Peyton. It's been fantastic.
Appreciate
Thank you
your time.
for all you're doing for STEM in Kansas City.
I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.
All right. Cool.